They didn't just come to kill us. They came to feed. The SCI-FI weren't your typical invaders. They didn't march in formation or chant in unison. They didn't raise flags. They didn't broadcast threats. They simply appeared, one star system at a time, dragging entire colonies into silence like some shadow beast rising from beneath the galactic floorboards. First it was the Arcturus Ring. Then the Halley Expanse. Then the Tenebrous Cradle, 3 billion souls gone dark within a week. The Council dismissed it at first. Localized piracy, they said. Communications failure, they guessed. The truth? The SCI-FI had returned. Ancient, silent, carnivorous, and they were very hungry. A predator without a roar. They didn't announce themselves. Not until they reached Kepler 112b, an Earth-aligned colony nestled in an oxygen-rich valley surrounded by hypergrowth jungle. Humans called it Serenity. 1,000 families. Quiet scientists, botanists, ex-soldiers raising children in peace. That's where the SCI-FI made their mistake. They underestimated what humanity had become. The attack came in the middle of an eclipse. Perfect cover, the predators thought. Atmospheric cloaking, seismic disruption, kinetic barrages all coordinated to collapse the human defense grid in 2.1 seconds. It worked on other species, but not humans. When the SCI-FI breach creature hit the first dome, it expected to find helpless prey. What it found was Emma Riker. Botanist by trade. Ex-Black Ops by history. Mother of 3. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She moved, with trained efficiency that hadn't dulled even after a decade of peace. She didn't aim for the center mass like the SCI-FI predicted. She aimed for the neck folds, the one part of their physiology they never protected, because no prey had ever survived long enough to fight back. She didn't just hurt it. She killed it. With a soil compactor. The blood that spoke volumes. The SCI-FI organism bled out in 12 seconds. Their blood wasn't red or green or even fluid in the normal sense. It was a semi-living mist of nanoflesh particles. And it did not like being exposed to oxygen. The fog curled violently, reacted with atmospheric ions, and began to scream, an electromagnetic wail that turned every receiver in Serenity into a speaker of alien agony. Humans recorded it, analyzed it, and for the first time they understood, the SCI-FI weren't just here for biomass. They were here for neurological signature. They fed on conscious thought. They devoured species at their intellectual peak. The more developed the mind, the richer the feast. They considered humans the last great banquet. They didn't expect us to hunt back. Humans did something no other species had ever done after the first SCI-FI attack. They went after them. Emma's transmission, sent 15 minutes after killing the first breach creature, changed everything. They bleed. They die. They panic. This isn't an extinction. It's a hunt, and we've just become the hunters. It went viral. Not just on Earth, but across the galactic net. Because the SCI-FI weren't just killing humans. They were killing everyone. And everyone had given up. Until humans fought back. The feast turned sour. What followed was classified as containment warfare, though that label hardly captured the chaos. Human recon teams moved fast. Ghost squads embedded into evacuated colonies. Drones disguised as life pods seeded tracking devices across compromised systems. And then, for the first time, SCI-FI home-sent trails were mapped. That's when humanity made its biggest play yet. Not to fight on Earth. Not to defend colonies. But to strike into the black. The rays of Tkai Rift. Tkai was a stellar graveyard. A drift zone of failed stars and magnetic chaos. A perfect hiding place for apex predators. Which made it the perfect trap. Human ships, small, silent, and ruthlessly fast, infiltrated with antimatter charges, atmospheric scramblers, and something new, neurofrequency bombs. They weren't meant to kill the SCI-FI. They were meant to poison their minds. Humanity had developed an algorithmic mimicry of SCI-FI fear, pain signatures derived from dissected specimens, amplified 1,000-fold. They detonated them near SCI-FI birthing dens. The screams lasted for hours. When silence returned, half the Tkai cluster had vanished. The galaxy watched, and began to understand. The humans aren't just surviving. They're teaching predators to feel fear. A message from the Pack Alpha. The SCI-FI finally responded. Not in words. In one message, carved into the remains of a human cruiser intercepted above Titan's edge. You are not food. You are fire. We will go where fire does not reach. And they did. The SCI-FI began to retreat. They hadn't done that in recorded history. Not once. And in their wake they left husks, planets stripped of intellect, of life, of potential. It wasn't just physical death. It was cultural starvation. Species like the Varnai, the Uru, and the Fitari, all left scattered, too broken to recover. Until Earth showed up. With medical teams. And weapons. And soldiers trained to hunt monsters in the dark. The Galactic Council's delayed panic. By the time the Council realized humans were no longer fighting defensively, it was too late. Humans had built a network. Dozens of species banded together under one cause. Protect the rising mind. Punish those who prey on the weak. It wasn't a new empire. It wasn't a conquest. It was justice. Forged in blood, sharpened in fire, delivered by those once marked as prey. And at the center of it all, Earth. Humanity. Evolved. Unshackled. The war isn't over, but the rules have changed. The SCI-FI still exist. In fragments. In systems too distant to map. But they no longer prowl. They hide. And when they do rise, they do so with caution. Because out there, in the black, are humans who remember. Humans who don't wait to be hunted. Humans who strike first, and make sure there's no second bite. The predators of the galaxy learn something old, something primal. That prey which survives becomes more dangerous than any predator could ever imagine. The ruins of the Sky Rift still pulsed with echoes. Not sound. Not radiation. Something deeper, like the remnant of a psychic howl lingering in a vacuum where no life dared whisper again. Humanity had struck a chord, and the galaxy trembled to hear it. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The SCI-FI were silent, yes, but silence for them had never meant surrender. It meant watching. Planning. Sharpening whatever horrors they'd been breeding in their biofactories. And now, they'd begun to adapt. New monsters for a new age. Emma Riker saw it first. Her unit had tracked a faint residual trail, biological, not electromagnetic, toward an abandoned moon orbiting a brown dwarf in Sector V9. It had no designation. It had no reason to exist. But something about it itched behind her eyes. They landed. They scanned. Nothing. Until her second-in-command, Private Mira Song, stumbled into what looked like a broken SCI-FI molting chamber. But the molting was recent. The creature inside was gone, hatched, fled, and worse, evolved. Human weapons had stopped working on them. The neck-fold weakness? Gone. The heat response deterrent? Adapted. The pheromonal tracking lures? Now attractants, drawing in humans like baited prey. And for the first time, Emma said aloud what she had hoped she'd never need to. We're not hunting anymore. We're being tested. The genetic echo chamber. Back at the Mars Forward Research Arcology, Dr. Samir Aslan, chief xenobioinformaticist, was deep into SCI-FI code sequences. And what he found was worse than anyone could have imagined. They weren't just evolving in reaction to human strategies. They were anticipating them. Embedded in their DNA were viral scripts, activated not by external exposure, but by human cognition signatures. In simpler terms, thinking about fighting them triggered new forms. The SCI-FI were weaponizing curiosity itself. Samir tried to warn Command. But by the time his report reached Earth HQ, 3 of the colonies nearest the Fornax line had gone dark. No distress beacons. No escape pods. Just a single transmission, 5 seconds of visual. A human child, cradled in the arms of an SCI-FI queen. Unharmed. Smiling. And behind them dozens of human corpses, folded into organic data matrices. The message was clear. We have learned you. Now you will learn pain. Operation Eclipse Paradox. The counterstrike was brutal. Humanity had always carried its rage in quiet places. Now it unleashed it like wildfire. Command launched Operation Eclipse Paradox, targeting suspected SCI-FI hibernation dens across 5 sectors simultaneously using quantum tunneling strike vessels. No mercy. No warnings. Just planetary sterilization via kinetic orbital penetrators. The result? 15,000 square kilometers of annihilated alien hives. And no confirmed SCI-FI casualties. Because they weren't there. They'd never been there. The dens were shells, psychoorganic traps designed to lure humanity's anger and waste its strength. It wasn't just war anymore. It was a chess match of extinction. The waking of the silent choir. Just as despair began to claw at Earth's growing alliance, something changed. A signal. From the edge of dark space. Not human. Not SCI-FI. Something older. The Zirvalen choir, a race thought extinct 10,000 years ago, sang into the stars. Their harmonic language hadn't been heard since before the Council's founding. Their words, translated by ancient AI constructs buried beneath Europa, were chilling. The flame walks again. The eater of thought has fed. The balance is broken. The prey must ascend, or all will be devoured. Emma Riker was among the first to hear the translation. And she understood immediately. The Irixthii hadn't evolved into monsters by accident. They were guided, shaped, pushed by something deeper in the galactic abyss. A force that had once culled the choir. Now it was stirring again. And humanity had stepped directly into its path. Predators gamble. The Irixthii made their next move publicly. They didn't send fleets. They released prisoners. Human captives, scientists, soldiers, even civilians, ejected from biopods at the edge of the Sol system, each one untouched but altered. They came with stories, nightmares, memories of things that didn't match human logic. One man, Commander Elias Vey of the Terran Phalanx, returned with crystalline growths behind his eyes. He wept constantly. Not from pain. From knowing. He told a story, one fragment at a time, over the course of 6 weeks. They showed me the end. Not just of us. Of everything. A hunger so pure it forgets it feeds. A predator so perfect it forgets it was ever alive. The Irixthii are just fingers. The hand is still coming. He died on the 7th week. Bleeding thoughts instead of blood. His final words? Tell Earth, this was never about food. This was about awakening. The Catalyst Protocol. If humanity had one advantage, it was that we never stopped building nightmares of our own. Dr. Aslan proposed a new initiative, the Catalyst Protocol, a technological infection designed to evolve faster than the Irixthii, mimicking their biological structure, but seeded with quantum chaos. In short, a virus coded in unpredictability. Humanity would give the Irixthii something they could not adapt to. Randomness. True biological madness. The first test was launched in the wreckage of the Altair ruins. An Irixthii scout drone absorbed the synthetic neuromesh and froze, dead in seconds. The second test, on a live predator, did not go as planned. It screamed, then laughed, then spoke. You finally understand. You are not prey. You are kin. And then it exploded into data, pure, raw information collapsing into a singularity that destabilized a planetary orbit. Emma Riker watched from orbit. And she whispered what humanity already feared. We've become too much like them. And they, too much like us. The path ahead is red. The galaxy no longer whispers of humans as prey. Now they whisper warnings. To strike at Earth is to awaken the dark in us. To test our limits is to build your own coffin. And to consume us is to become something worse than death. But the war is not over. Because the predators are still watching. And now, they're learning to smile. The Irixthii scout hadn't died. Not truly. It had become something else. Something that laughed in languages older than stars. Something that dissolved into code and dreams and planted itself into the walls of reality. And now, things were whispering again in the void. Not about war. But about convergence. Humanity stood at the edge of something ancient, something vast, and they were beginning to change in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Eden lost, Terra awakened. Emma Riker didn't sleep anymore. Not since the Irixthii scout's death. Not since the Catalyst Protocol had gone rogue. The explosion hadn't just destroyed a planet's orbit. It had ripped a hole in the galactic substrate, a thin crack between spacetime and something underneath it. She had seen things in that crack. Shapes. Lights that bled backwards. Creatures with voices shaped like memories she hadn't lived. One of them had whispered, "We remember you. We remember when you were stars. Burn again." She tried to report it to command. They told her she needed rest. She smashed her terminal and walked straight to the nearest warp gate. There was no rest coming. Only war. Only evolution. The siege of Kaler's spine. By then, humanity's colonies on Kaler's spine, an artificial ring world abandoned millennia ago, had gone silent. Not destroyed. Not decayed. Just silenced. Satellites showed cities intact. Lights still glowing. No sign of battle. No bodies. Just frozen, smiling people staring up at skies filled with black geometries. Dr. Samir Aslan was called back in. He'd been working underground since the Catalyst backlash, using neurolocked AIs to keep from slipping into whatever it was that the scout had become. But Kaler's data was different. When they jacked into the city's central archive, they heard voices. Human voices. "We're happy now. We see it all. You shouldn't have fought them. They just want to show us the truth." It wasn't mind control. It was belief. The Irixthii didn't just prey on the body now. They preyed on certainty. Ghost logic. It spread quickly. Ships returning from Kaler reported malfunctions in AI. then navigation drift, then temporal glitches. 2 battleships returned to Mars orbit reporting they'd been in combat for 6 minutes. From Earth's perspective, they'd been gone for 11 years. The crews hadn't aged. One of them, the SCI-FI, had a hull engraved with symbols that no species in the known galaxy could decipher. Yet when scanned, those symbols whispered to the machine learning systems. Whispered designs. Weapons. Things Earth had never conceived, but recognized instantly as usable. And the worst part? The SCI-FI hadn't sent them back to intimidate or attack. They'd sent them back to inspire. Let's see what your prey becomes, their message said. The rise of the human non-state. By now, Earth's military-industrial systems were fragmented. Not by defeat but evolution. Command had dissolved. Not officially. But its reach no longer extended to the new fringe colonies forming in ghost space. Led by outcasts, rogue AIs, and xenohybrids, these colonies weren't loyal to Earth's laws. They were loyal to survival. And survival now meant thinking like a predator. One of them, Unit 77A, broadcasted a declaration across 14 sectors. We are no longer citizens. We are no longer soldiers. We are the answer to the question your monsters asked. We are what happens when the prey bites back hard enough to kill God. They wore bones as armor. They spoke only in mission ciphers. And their warships? Modeled after the fractal geometries found in Kaler's ruined moons. Unnerving. Unstoppable. Unhuman. The second becoming. Emma Riker finally returned to Earth. But not as a soldier. As a messenger. And a warning. The SCI-FI weren't trying to win a war. They were trying to end a cycle. Every predator race they had ever encountered had done the same thing. Devoured, spread, extinguished, repeated. But humanity? Humanity adapted with purpose. Not just survival, but meaning. They weren't the most powerful. They weren't the most intelligent. But they were the only species that created belief out of trauma, turned suffering into doctrine and pain into pathways. The SCI-FI didn't want to consume humans. They wanted to become them. And in the process, humanity was becoming something else too. The final cipher. It came from nowhere. Not a transmission. Not a drone. Just a single black monolith appeared outside of Jupiter orbit. 30 kilometers tall. Perfect edges. No radiation signature. No matter displacement. It was impossible. And then, it opened. Inside there was only light. No gravity. No heat. Just words. Spoken directly into the minds of every sapient species in the quadrant. This is your genesis. You have devoured all your predators. Now become the storm. The SCI vanished that day. Every single known biological trace, gone. No war. No fight. Just absence. As if they had never existed. Whispers from the void. Some called it a victory. Others knew better. Humanity hadn't won. It had been chosen. Not by a god. Not by a machine. By the echo of something much older. An algorithmic hunger in the bones of reality that rewarded the clever, the vicious, and the willful. The thing the SCI had feared all along. Not extinction. Not failure. But that one day the prey would understand the game too well. And rewrite it. The stars did not celebrate. When the SCI vanished, there was no fireworks across nebulae. No songs of liberation from the slave worlds. No formal treaties inked in digital ink. There was only silence. And in that silence, humanity stood alone, changed, charged, and no longer prey. The monolith beyond Jupiter remained open. Not as an invitation. As a mirror. The Genesis rewritten. Admiral Lysander Vu was the first to walk through the monolith. His last transmission was a single phrase. It's not a door. It's a map. After that, the Nightingale Protocol activated, an automated Earth failsafe meant to ensure full planetary lockdown in the event of cognitive contagion. Too late. The concept seeded by the SCI, of humanity not as a target, but as the final evolution of prey, had already taken root. Humanity wasn't returning to the past. They were walking toward something entirely new. Something alien. Something earned. The formation of the Arx Umbra. The Arx Umbra wasn't a government. It wasn't a faction. It was a calling. Made of void marines, rogue synthetics, evolved psionics, and, most terrifying, those who had heard the monolith and remained unchanged. The ones the stars began to fear. They weren't conquerors. They didn't claim territory. They appeared wherever balance collapsed, wherever the old predators of the galaxy re-emerged. And then they acted, with silence, with precision, and with no survivors. The Arx Umbra believed something terrible. That predator and prey were philosophies, not species. That any being given enough desperation and rage could ascend the chain. They didn't want humans to be dominant. They wanted humanity to be the last correction in a galaxy gone feral. And when they whispered, others listened. You taught us fear. Now let us teach you its final form. The return of the SCI-FI. They did come back. Not in fleets. Not in ships. But in shapes. Clouds of rewritten logic. Swarms of quantum fractures shaped like gods. Voices stitched from the minds of those they'd consumed in the past. The SCI-FI hadn't died. They had evolved themselves, to escape their own curse. They wanted to test the new apex. Humanity. The first encounter happened above the broken moon of Tanarak. A Terran outpost went dark. Not destroyed, overwritten. When investigators arrived, they found a single survivor, giggling and cutting his own arm in geometric patterns. He pointed to the sky and said, "They came back to worship. We are their altar." Within days, 3 more sectors fell silent. Earth's final gambit. They couldn't win through strength. The SCI-FI now existed in data, in thought, in code infecting dark matter. They slipped between realities and edited their own deaths. So humanity stopped playing the game. They changed the rules. On a drifting prison station called the Black Anvil, Earth deployed the first Ontoforge, a weapon that didn't kill. It rewrote memory. It turned the predator's self-image into that of prey. Whole SCI-FI fractal clouds collapsed in on themselves, fleeing their own simulated fear. Some begged for death. Others deconstructed into whimpers across the commnet. Humanity didn't cheer. They just kept going. The age of unspoken names. By 12 a.m. after null, human names became whispers in ancient halls. The Shakwari stopped speaking Earth's name altogether. The Valen Empire declared their history null and rewritten to exclude the years they'd warred with Terra. What? Because humans had stopped being part of the galactic order. They had become something else. A universal constant. A myth forged in plasma, psionics, and fire. The once ravenous predator species who ruled before the dawn of man now taught their cubs caution. If the void is quiet too long, they are watching. If your prey smiles before dying, they are coming. If you hear the word Terra, in a language you don't understand, run. Humanity wasn't a military power anymore. They were a story that fought back. The council that never met. Across the stars, a last council gathered. Species too proud to admit fear. Too ancient to evolve again. They met in a place no records could reach, where time bent and memory bent further. They debated, should they strike first? Should they try to eliminate this rising apex before they lost their chance? An ancient, 12-eyed being named Zulakar spoke one final line before vanishing from existence. We were predators because we never met gods. We were kings because we never met monsters. And now we are neither. That council never reconvened. Some say they vanished into a sun. Others say they became human. The last broadcast. Emma Riker, changed, no longer fully human, recorded the final log before entering the monolith one last time. In it, she spoke not to governments nor to allies. She spoke to any creature out there still wondering if humanity was safe to provoke. You hunted us. You caged us. You labeled us primitive and slow. You watched us crawl, fall, and break. But every time we did, we learned. And now you want us to stop? We can't. You taught us the hunger. Now let's see if you can survive your own lesson. And so the legends begin. Children across thousands of worlds tell stories now. Of ships that arrive with no sound. Of humans who look like nothing special, until provoked. Of a laugh heard across time itself, echoing from Earth's distant moon, long after the last war ended. They say Earth burned once, and built a city from its own ashes. They say humans die easily, and get back up harder. And they say the reason no one hunts humans anymore? Because humans hunt back. If you've journeyed with us this far, welcome to the apex. Subscribe to The Void Narratives, to stay in orbit with more epic HFY sagas, where humanity doesn't just survive, we rewrite the stars. Satellite news story incoming. Stay sharp.